the Victorian government is finally about to turn a profit. This is the first time since 2019, but Victoria's net debt is still at $167.6 billion and continues to rise. So what does the future hold for Victoria's finances? Today, Yan will help you break down why a surplus and debt can exist at the same time, where the government's money is going, and what this has to do with buying a house in Melbourne. Let's start by separating these two concepts. The Victorian government's budget for 2025 to 2026 shows that their revenue will exceed their expenditure. This is the first time since the pandemic that there will be an operating surplus, which is expected to reach $600 million. The financial situation is indeed improving, and that's true. But in the same budget, net debt is $167.6 billion, and in 3 years it will rise to $194 billion. Debt is also increasing, and that's also true. Isn't the government making money? So why is the debt getting bigger and bigger? To put it simply, a surplus just looks at this year's income and expenses. As long as you make more money than you spend this year, that's called a surplus. But debt refers to what you owe from the past, the deficits accumulated over previous years. Just because you made a bit of money this year doesn't mean all your debts are paid off, right? If your salary this month is just enough to cover your expenses, the money you owed on Huabei from last month is still there. A more accurate way to measure this is the ratio of debt to GSP. GSP is actually the GDP at the state government level. This year, the debt to GSP ratio is 25%, and it is expected to slightly decrease to 24.9% by 2028 or 2029. This number starting to turn around is the real sign of a turning point. It doesn't mean your debt is decreasing, but rather that the growth rate of debt is starting to slow down relative to the size of the economy. The speed at which you make money is now greater than the speed at which you accumulate debt. That is the true signal of a turning point. I really like an investor from Vision Capital named Lao Fan. He has a set of super signal investment systems, and in my view, the turning point of a trend is a very important super signal. Let's look at another set of numbers for comparison. Before 2014, Victoria's annual infrastructure spending never exceeded $6 billion, but after our esteemed Premier Andrew took office, the amount increased every year. The peak from 2023 to 2024 has already reached $24.2 billion. That period was the springtime for infrastructure. Projects like the East-West Metro line, a large number of roads, and hospitals were all approved during those years. Now the government is proactively stepping on the brakes, aiming to bring infrastructure spending back down to around $16 billion, with a timeline set for 2028 to 2029. From about $24 billion in spending to $16 billion, that's a reduction of a full $8 billion per year. This is fiscal discipline, but it also means that the golden era of major infrastructure projects is coming to an end. Already announced projects include things like subway lines, highway expansions, hospitals, the planning of major commercial hubs in the far southeast, the upgrade of Frankston Hospital, and so on. The budget has already been allocated, so these are very likely to continue and are unlikely to be abandoned halfway. With the fiscal situation improving, the government has the ability to retract existing commitments, but the approval of new projects will become extremely cautious. To be honest, don't bet on the government suddenly announcing some new large-scale infrastructure project to boost housing prices. News like that will become increasingly rare. When choosing a district, prioritize areas where mature infrastructure is already in place and construction has begun, rather than listening to house and land package agents hype up a future shopping center. Stop dreaming. The fiscal situation is improving, the debt to GSP ratio is peaking, and the pressure on Victoria's credit rating is starting to ease. So here I'll share 3 personal assessments. First, Victoria's finances are indeed improving, but debt is still rising and interest pressure remains. It's true that they're making money, but it's also true that they're still in debt. However, the overall situation is getting better. The exploitation of landlords over the past few years will also improve accordingly. Second, infrastructure is entering a contraction phase. Projects that have already been announced are very likely to proceed, but approvals for new projects will be extremely stringent. Seeds were sown in the spring, and now it's autumn, the season of harvest. This is expected to bring a large number of job opportunities, boost economic development, and drive up housing prices. Third, although this is a financial budget for Victoria, the past 8 months have proven that everything is still on track and the future looks promising. If you currently have the budget and are considering investing in Melbourne, the overall environment is in your favor. If you really want to seize the right timing for investment, what could be more suitable than the darkness before dawn? Would you consider investing in Victoria? Share your thoughts in the comments section.